Alright, so today we're going to talk about ecosystems and how energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. So, some big picture questions. Where does all the energy come from that is in an ecosystem? And how does this energy move through organisms in an ecosystem? So our focus today is energy in an ecosystem. So that's dependent upon the knowledge of thermodynamics. So if we look at our standard here, it says use the first and second law of thermodynamics to evaluate and communicate energy flow. So what is thermodynamics? So thermodynamics is a branch of physics dealing with heat and energy. What is a scientific law? So a scientific law is a statement considered to be fact based on many repeated observations and experiments. So we have two laws of thermodynamics that we're going to learn today. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it just changes form. And one form of energy is heat. So here we have a picture car. Okay, and a car has an engine in it, and that engine converts chemical energy to mechanical energy. Okay, so how does it do that? So the chemical energy is within the bonds of the gasoline, which is the fuel for the car, and then the gasoline is converted to mechanical energy. So mechanical energy is the energy of motion, and so as that gas explodes within the engine, the engine parts move, and then those moving parts also create heat, and so energy is also lost in the form of heat. And so you know that your engine runs at a very high temperature, over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and so that heat energy is basically some energy that's lost within that process. So how does this happen in an ecosystem? So here we see an example where we have the sun, and the sun emits radiant energy in the form of solar energy. Okay, and so the solar energy, light energy, is absorbed by the trees' leaves, and then that produces chemical energy through photosynthesis. Now here's some food for thought. Why are there more, what are there more of in an ecosystem? Producers or predators? So let's look at this food chain, for example. How many producers do you see? Just one. How many predators? All right, there's several predators, right? Why do you think that is? All right, so today's lesson, you should be able to answer that question because you'll understand why there are more predators than there are producers. All right, so let's learn about the second law of thermodynamics. So that states that as energy changes form, more of it becomes unusable. So as organisms use energy, less of it becomes available to be passed on. Why is that the case? Because some of the energy is released as heat energy. So this explains why there are less organisms as you move up trophic levels. There's less energy available. All right, think about the number of flowers in a field. Compare that to the number of grasshoppers in a field. Okay, there are more flowers than there are grasshoppers. Compare that to the number of mice in a field. Well, there are definitely more grasshoppers in the field than there are mice. Compare that to snakes in the field. There are way fewer snakes in the field than there are mice, right? There are way more mice. What about hawks? Okay, there's more snakes than there are hawks. Okay, so you notice that there are fewer and fewer number of animals as you go up this food chain. Why is that the case? That's because there's less energy available. Okay. let's see how this energy is transferred. So here we have a primary producer, this plant. Okay, and we have two different colored arrows. The yellow and red arrows represent heat energy, and then the blue arrows represent nutrients. So we can see the sun here. It radiates down to the plant, okay, and then heat is released as a byproduct, okay, but some of that light energy is absorbed, okay, and then the rabbit eats the plant, and then when that happens, those nutrients are passed on along to the rabbit. But some of that energy is lost in terms of heat, right? The rabbit has a certain body temperature, and so you get loss of nutrients and energy that way, based off of the heat being lost. Okay, and then the hawk eats the rabbit, and again, you get a transfer of energy, but loss of heat due to heat. Now, in the second scenario here, we have a plant being eaten by a mouse. Okay, so again, you get transfer of nutrients, but again, energy lost due to heat. The snake eats the mouse. You get a transfer of energy, but again, you get a loss of due to heat. Now, the rabbit, the mouse, the snake, the hawk, they all end up dying and decomposing, right? And so that process of decomposition also produces heat. But then you also get a recycling of nutrients, and so the nutrients are used up by another plant, okay, and the cycle goes on. So we've talked about food chains and food webs. Now we're going to talk about what's called an energy pyramid. You've probably heard of food pyramids before, and it tells you what to eat and how much of each type of food to eat and what not to eat. An energy pyramid basically tells you the amount of energy in an ecosystem. Okay, so here at the base of the pyramid, we see a lot of producers. Okay, so notice most of the energy found at the bottom is found based off of producers. Okay, so in terms of numbers, in terms of energy, there's more energy in producers than there are in primary consumers. All right, why is that? Well, with every transfer of nutrients, you get loss of energy due to heat. All right, so here we see primary producers, plants, and then the rabbits eat the plants. They're primary consumers. Okay, and then snakes eat rabbits, and then they are secondary consumers. You get loss of energy with every time you go up the energy pyramid. And then finally, tertiary consumer, the hawk eats the snake, and you get loss of energy every time you go up the energy pyramid. So first law of thermodynamics, energy changes form. Energy enters the ecosystem from the sun, is converted to usable energy by producers. The second law of thermodynamics, energy is lost as heat. So here we can see sort of an overview of this. So here we have an energy pyramid. So we have all consumable energy available in the ecosystem, or in the plants, 100%, primary producers, right? And then as you go up the energy pyramid, only 10% of the energy moves it up to the next level. Okay, so when we talked about primary producers, right, only 10% of that energy is going to be transferred to the rabbits. Maybe that explains why rabbits eat a lot of grass, right? And then what happens? Well, then snakes eat the rabbits. And again, you only get 10% of that energy is transferred. Now look at this. If we're starting out with 100%, starting out with plants, only 10% make it, rabbits. And then only 1% makes it to secondary consumers. And only 0.1% to third level consumers. And then 0.01% to apex predators. All right, so how do you figure this out percentage-wise? Well, it's easy. If it's 10%, you just cut off a 0 here. So 10% becomes, 100% becomes 10%, 10% becomes 1%, 1%, you're basically moving the decimal place over. 1% becomes 0.1%, and then 0.1% becomes 0.01%. So again, only about 10% of the energy moves up a trophic level on an energy pyramid. So the remaining energy, 90% of that energy, is lost in the form of heat. So here we see the sun's energy is used to create plants, to energize plants, produce the energy needed for plants to thrive. All right, you have 90% of that energy is lost as heat. Okay, all these animals and plants, they die and they decompose, right? And then they provide nutrients for the primary consumers. Primary producers. All right, so this is the flow of energy in an energy pyramid, and so it's interesting to know there's very little energy that's being transferred from one trophic level to the next. All right, our next topic, you've probably heard of the word calorie before. Okay, so what does that word mean to you? So to me, it reminds me of when you eat something, you can look on the package, you can see the number of calories on the package. It tells you how many calories you're going to eat if you eat that food. So energy is measured in a unit we call a calorie. Okay, so the kind of calories we see written on food labels are actually kilocalories. That means kilo means 1,000. So 1,000 kilocalories, all right, is what we call 1 calorie nutritionally. So if this is 150 calories for a serving or 2 scoops, it's 150 kilocalories, all right, which technically is 150,000 calories with a little c, not a big C. All right, so you have different types of calories. So calories you talk about in science are the smaller than the calories we talk about in food. So those are kilocalories. All right, so of course, calories in food tell us how much energy that food can provide. So we know that going up each trophic level, we only have 10% of the energy that's passed from one level to the next. So if there are 5,000 kilocalories available to the producer in this diagram, the grass, how much is available at each of the next levels? I want you to pause the video and I want you to figure out, if we're starting out with 5,000 kilocalories for grass, how many calories is a grasshopper going to be able to have? Remember, only 10%, right? So try to figure out what the number would be for the grasshopper, and then for the mouse, and then for the owl. All right, so you should have wrote down 5,000 kilocalories for the grass, and then 10% of 5,000, you just take off that 0 there, is 500, right? And then you take off another 0, that's another 10%. The mouse is only going to have 50 kilocalories in it. And the owl is only going to have 5 kilocalories. Okay. All right, so your homework, I want you guys to complete this little energy in an ecosystem worksheet. Okay, there is a link there for you, so if you just click on the link, you should be taken to that worksheet. It's in Google Docs, and you just have to fill it out and attach it to the assignment.